Welcome into Surviving Paradise, podcast that takes a sometimes serious, sometimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that we're living in a modern day spiritual paradise. I'm your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, most importantly, a little guy raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the 70s and 80s. Welcome in this week. We try to have some fun here. If you're listening in for the first time, there's lots of sarcasm, humor, there's laughter, there's sometimes tears, including from me. Never meant to offend anyone, simply my own brand of observation. And once again, welcome in. I have to say that it is summertime here in the U.S., and I guess it's summertime everywhere for that matter, but I find myself waxing a little nostalgic today. On more than one occasion the past few weeks, as complete strangers rebuild 2 floors of my house here at Flood Central, I've taken a mental break and I found myself drifting away to summer adventures of the past that were a lot more fun, I might add. For anyone that has grown up a Jehovah's Witness, summertime has always been marked by the annual district convention. Back in the day, the district convention was the event of the year. Who remembers that? For some of us, we had to lock in hotel rooms. There was, of course, the obligatory service meeting part about how we should act, dress, and speak when in another city, at the hotel, out by the pool, didn't matter. But we had to lock in hotel rooms. It was like a trip. And as kids, we always hoped the hotel had a pool. We loved the pool. And of course, there was lots of counsel on the type of bathing suit you were allowed to wear. Who can forget how important it was to shop for new convention clothes? That was a huge deal. This became a really big deal, or an even bigger deal, I should say, as a teenager, because frankly, we were going to spend most of the time at the convention cruising the hallways looking for cute sisters. We packed lunches, we stuffed our book bags with gum and candy in an effort to stay awake during the marathon afternoon talks that came after lunch. We were fighting off, you remember, the head nod that got everyone around us laughing if we drifted off to sleep, did a head bob, and drooled on ourselves. And it was something to behold at the district conventions. But back in the day, we sat in massive stadiums. For me, it included places like Dodger Stadium, the now long gone Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego, the Cow Palace in San Francisco, which was my favorite. We went to Oakland Alameda Stadium, where my younger brother got a sunburn. There was Gill Coliseum in Corvallis, Oregon, and then, of course, the Tacoma Dome in the state of Washington. There was a time when we had live orchestras down on the field. Who remembers that? People that knew how to play instruments, can you imagine, that were also Jehovah's Witnesses, and they played the songs before and after, and as we sang. It was cool. Frankly, it was kind of cool. We had live costume dramas with special effects. Remember when Lot's wife turned to salt? Who remembers that drama? It actually, for a kid watching, was pretty cool. They pulled it off. This kind of cloth draped over her as she turned to salt because that bad woman looked back. Jezebel getting tossed out a window. Who remembers that drama? Oh, and of course, my guy Noah, with the audio turned up so loud in the stadium when Jehovah started the thunder and rain. Remember that drama? You could hear the thunder and the rain with the voices of people screaming outside the ark, begging for Noah to let them in. Who remembers that? That was a real drama back in the day at the district convention. Noah got in early this week, you might have noted. And for today's younger Jehovah's Witness, I remember going to Dodger Stadium when I was really young for 8 freaking days. 8 days. We packed the car and drove to Dodger Stadium. There were 8-day district conventions. You thought the 3 days were bad? 8 days back in the 70s. And who remembers that famous talk with the heartbeat? Anybody listening old enough to remember that? With the sound of the heartbeat as the brother gave the talk? The district convention. As I got older, I worked in the sound department, which meant hooking up speakers outside the stadium and in food service. I'm sure we didn't break any OSHA laws, by the way. Child labor. I was a kid on a ladder crawling through crawl spaces and dangling 25 feet off the ground, hooking up wires so people could have sound where they were making sandwiches. But hey, the angels were there protecting us, remember? And when you alone have Holy Spirit, you're not worried about an inexperienced teenage guy getting electrocuted. And frankly, it was much better than cleaning those men's bathrooms. I have to say, the smells of those bathrooms haunt me to this day. The district convention. It was the event back in the day for Jehovah's Witnesses. And while times have changed, obviously inside God's organization, including most conventions looking a little sparse these days, the music has gotten worse, the speakers seem so much worse, and if you haven't noticed, who needs the Bible anymore or to take notes when everything is on a Jehovah's Witness phone now? Costume dramas? Nah. We got video and we got CGI this year. When you show Jesus, it's no longer Brother Jones, your local elder, wearing a fake beard. He can have a real beard now. But it's some brother you may not know playing Jesus in their latest movie. They've gone from pre-recorded audio to some of the most awful acting you will ever see if you haven't seen this movie. I couldn't help but think Ryan Reynolds and Margot Robbie are safe. They are not threatened by the actors being used by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. A lot has changed, frankly, in today's modern landscape. I'm not sure how Jehovah's Witnesses even feel about the district convention anymore. It's really weird for us people that grew up on this. Everything is on a screen now. So all the crazy stuff we did in the past seems to be a distant memory. I doubt that looking for a cute sister or brother is even a big deal anymore. They probably follow each other on Instagram. I don't know. No clue. However, some things never change at the summer convention. And it's convention season, folks. The 2024 Declare the Good News District Convention is in full swing for Jehovah's Witnesses around the globe. I have to confess, as I do, I've been watching the convention program for a couple of weeks now, and as you might have guessed, it not only looks different, there are dudes on stage with beards now, but the more things change, the more things stay the same. The convention is filled with content I hope to comment on in the next few weeks. I'm going to go Christianity a la carte and pick a few things, including the most hyped summer blockbuster of all time. After 3 long years of marketing, the governing body's new Jesus movie is the foundation for this year's convention. And I have to say at this point, this movie deserves its own commentary and episode. That's for a future day. As you might imagine, there are so many nuggets of Holy Spirit at this year's summer convention that it can be a little overwhelming. If you're thinking there's something new here, I don't know, like a newly discovered parable from Jesus that explains what an overlapping generation is, or maybe an interview with a materialized angel, or even a guest interview with maybe Toni Morris, no, none of that is in this year's convention. I'm sorry to disappoint you. However, there is a treasure trove of counsel that, well, we've all heard before. Many times before. For example, are you ready for this? I'm about to utter the word that strikes fear into any Jehovah's Witness, especially a kid or young person. You know what that word is. Are you ready? Brace yourselves. Here's something that's in this year's convention. Are you ready? I know you're scared. This year's convention has symposiums. I know. If you hadn't looked at the waste of paper and money that is the schedule for each day, you remember those? We got them as we came through the door of the Coliseum. You're caught flat-footed when the dreaded symposium begins. You blew it. And you asked mom to go to the bathroom during the last talk. And now you have nowhere to escape to. No excuse in place. Your bladder is empty. No way for you to dodge the dreaded symposium. And they're in this year's convention as well. The 2024 convention has a couple of dreaded symposiums on Friday, day one. And wow, have times changed. The first one is all about the gospel writers and completely misses the mark with zero scholarship or recognition that none of the four gospels were written by the guys they're named after. But pay no attention to that fact. Ignore it. But the second one is even better, that being the dreaded symposium. It's titled Lessons from the Land of Jesus. And it takes witnesses on a travel channel like journey that includes Bible land geography, animals, and even food. It's really deep stuff. Very deep. Jesus didn't eat bacon, but Jesus did eat wheat. He has not yet allowed gluten-free food to be a thing on earth. And I couldn't help but remember why the word symposium struck fear into every Jehovah's Witness teen or kid. They're now giving us tour guides in Bible lands. I mean, who pays for this stuff? But back in the day, a dreaded symposium meant we were going to examine in great, fabricated detail each horn on some wild beast's head, courtesy of John in Revelation. A deep dive on why the beast was red, who was riding it, and why she was a total slut. Hours would go by as they marched different clean-shaven brothers onto the stage to tell us why some beasts with 10 horns that looked like a locust with wings was critical. It was critical to our lives, and we're going to dissect it. Who remembers those symposiums? Even as we sat there wondering what mushrooms John had gotten into on Patmos. Brutal explanations that would go on forever as you tried not to pass out from the sub sandwich and Oreo you had just eaten at lunch. The memories are so alive and vivid in my head when it comes to these symposiums. But now, in 2024, Jehovah's Witnesses are treated to a deep dive on animals and food. Jesus just really wants his people to know this stuff. We may have nothing on how the creator of all things took a vacation for 9 months in Mary's belly, or how they disciplined Jesus when he threw his food out of his high chair, but it's not important. The 2024 convention features Jesus and his faithful slave giving us symposiums on his neighborhood back in the day and what he may have eaten for lunch. You know, after creating himself. Scoff not. This is all food at the proper time according to the governing body, even as the threat of Armageddon is hanging over the heads of billions of people that may or may not be listening. This is life and death stuff at the convention this year. And I have to tell you, when I saw this, it was my first real indication in many years that, well, are they running out of material? I mean, are they? Travel Channel like videos of some guy with an Australian accent telling us what kind of food they ate and what kind of animals live nearby. But worry not if you're concerned. I'm going to focus on what really pissed me off in this year's 2024 summer convention. I know you're wondering, oh no, is there more new light? No, it's not anything new. But even after many years out, it still makes me mad. Because sitting in that audience are very real people with real lives, real dreams, real feelings, listening to all of what comes after this and believing the invisible guy hovering above them somewhere really wants them to listen and obey what they're being told by the governing body. So here goes. I'm going to take just one of the talks in this year's summer convention, and well, I guess the best warning I can give is I'm going to go on a rant. Here we go. The final talk on Saturday's convention is called, "What Will You Do for the Sake of the Good News?" And it's given to the audience by speaker Stephen Bell, who's part of the branch committee in New York. I must say, Brother Bell has quite the personality. If you haven't seen this yet, I think you should go see it. There is nothing new here in his talk. Not for anyone that has ever been a Jehovah's Witness or is a Jehovah's Witness. However, as usual, and with the passage of time, I find this talk remarkable. I also don't think that choosing Brother Bell and his personality is an accident. He seems to have the perfect personality to deliver several messages to the audience that they've been using for decades, the same messages. He appears to be middle-aged, I don't know, 50s, 60s, not sure, or older, but doesn't present himself like he's half asleep, like many of the speakers do. In your standard, you recognize it, that standard monotone voice that seems to mark so many of the guys they're putting on video these days. Even the younger guys, if you're paying attention, seem to be graduates of some sort of no personality public speaking school. I don't know. There's no personality. There's zero inflection. It's wild. But it's not a shock, since the organization has gone to more manuscript formats. For those of us that remember, this was happening right about the time I was leaving, particularly on Sunday's public talks. They were stripping the brothers of any personality. I remember that I basically had to throw away half my outlines because they wanted me to read what they had to say. And they can't have these guys, particularly at the summer convention, straying from the message, right? They don't want any personality in this stuff. But Brother Bell delivers the same soul-crushing messages that have stolen the lives of millions, if not billions, of people. And he particularly singles out young people. I know it's a shocker, who may be just starting their adult lives in this organization. They've likely had most of those same people they're talking to since they were little kids. They've had them captured. But now, as those same people approach the freedom of adulthood, they want to be sure that they keep their brains captured and under their control. And it's obvious, folks, in this talk. In other words, your standard district convention talk aimed at maintaining control of their most important demographic, young people. This guy on the branch committee in New York, and he has just enough experience and personality to deliver the death punch talk that is featured at every convention. We know it, and he's clearly good at this, which is why they put him in this role. As I listened in, I'm just amazed at the level of lying and gaslighting that Jehovah's Witnesses, and again, young people, are exposed to at these conventions. I'm going to quote directly from his talk, but I, as always, encourage everyone, if you're interested to make sure I'm not a mentally diseased apostate, go watch the video for yourself. His comments I take word for word, which took a few minutes of time to capture. He begins the talk by saying this, quote, "Young ones, do you want the best life ever on this side of Armageddon? Would you like exciting assignments? Would you like to wake up in the morning and jump out of bed and run to your assignment because you know you're touching the lives of others and you are working with the best people on earth? Actual quote. He answers his own introductory questions with this, quote, "If so, do not look for a career in this world," end quote. And the audience laughs. Let's unpack this. That's quite an introduction, right? Those are some pretty bombastic statements. And immediately, as I saw this, I cringed. And almost as quickly, I got the worst feeling in my stomach, with my predominant thought being that grown, thinking people are nodding along to these questions and intro and giggling along with him. This man just got on stage and insinuated into a microphone that the life of a Jehovah's Witness is the best life just this side of a mass genocide, completely forgetting to mention that life after the mass slaughter features these same people listening in, shoveling millions of dead bodies, a vegan diet, and living alone forever if they're currently single. But most importantly, he seems to forget even that life post-Armageddon is in itself temporary. That they teach it only lasts 1,000 years before Jehovah lets his guy Satan loose on all these same people all over again. Because Jehovah just isn't sure at that point after 1,000 years about these same people that he let live through Armageddon and if they're loyal or not. I mean, wow. I couldn't help it, folks. He makes these questions and not many people are connecting the dots. They're not thinking. They even giggle along with him. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, of course, we're the best people on earth. But Stephen, Brother Bell, wants the audience to know that to just get to that post-Armageddon life, you must choose the life of a Jehovah's Witness now. Then maybe, kinda, sorta, probably, you might get to that next stage. You see, it's a lot like a video game with Jehovah. You're trying to level up. You're trying to get to the next level. But never mind. Stephen is here to tell us that being a Jehovah's Witness in 2024, especially again, he's addressing young people, is the best life ever. Whether you're a Jehovah's Witness listening or someone that has left, how do you feel about this? Do you agree? Is being a Jehovah's Witness today in 2024 the best life ever? What is the best part? What would you rank on your top 10 great reasons to be a Jehovah's Witness in 2024? I ran through a list in my head as I listened and watched this video. Is it giving up on your goals and dreams to stand in front of that book cart again this Saturday for hours and hours at a time? Is it not dating someone you're attracted to because, well, they're not a baptized Jehovah's Witness? I don't know. Is it hiding your sexuality because you should be ashamed of how you were born and who you want to be with romantically? I don't know. Is it the schedule every week? All those meetings, handing out their literature, going home alone and doing it all over again tomorrow like Groundhog Day? Is it stifling your talents in favor of laboring for a publishing and real estate company? Is it obeying 9 guys in New York by shunning your own family because they just don't agree with you, or should I say them, or any number of comments they have on several subjects? Is it not having enough money to retire or even take a vacation because you've accepted a job well below your talents in order to serve them? So I ask, what is it that makes being a Jehovah's Witness in 2024, as Brother Bell says here, quote, the best life ever this side of Armageddon? and I'm asking for a friend. What is it? What is it that makes it the best life ever? But Brother Bell, again, addressing young people, because, the old people at this point in the audience, they don't count. Just send money. He continues by asking those listening, do you want, quote, exciting assignments? He asks if we want exciting assignments that, quote, make us jump out of bed and run to them. Yeah, he says this with a straight face and a smile. Please go watch. You see, being a Jehovah's Witness is exciting, and everyone gets an exciting assignment, unless you're a woman. Sorry. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, are you currently, as you listen in bravely, thanks for being here, are you living a life of excitement? How exciting is your life now? What is your exciting assignment? If you're someone that has left the spiritual paradise of Jehovah's Witnesses, I guess I need to ask you, do you even remember any exciting assignments? I tell you what, I tried to jog my memory. I'm struggling. I'm once again asking for a friend. What were your exciting assignments that made you jump out of bed and run to them? I'll just say this. The pinnacle of this organization and an exciting assignment might be something like pioneering. Maybe that came to mind. Where some poor souls stress themselves out, living just above the poverty line in some cases with multiple roommates, to make an imaginary hour requirement never taught by Jesus or anyone else in the Bible. It's exciting indeed. The pioneers, as we know them, would make incredible sacrifices. They would get in cars. They would drive around, often not feeling well physically or tired, but there they were. They have to make those hours after all, hoping beyond all hope someone would talk to them, or let's be honest, sometimes hoping no one would talk to them. They're fried, handing out books and magazines they didn't write, then showing up to their part-time job mentally exhausted and plowing through. I mean, this is the very definition of excitement if you're a Jehovah's Witness pioneer. Do you agree? The excitement usually centered around how to make ends meet financially, as they gave free labor to a printing organization in New York. It's very exciting when you're a single sister, your car breaks down, you have no money, but you need 6.5 more hours to make your time, or you're going to get a visit from the elders who will meet with you to ask why you missed the mark. I mean, come on now. The excitement is palpable as you lay in bed dealing with crippling anxiety, all over something completely fabricated by these men. Wow. You're right, Brother Bell. Endless excitement that makes me want to jump out of bed. But maybe you're not a pioneer. Maybe you consider the exciting assignment is when you finally achieve that circuit overseer title. For the fellas, the girls can't do it, where you live off donated money from other struggling publishers around your region, and you get those secret handshakes during your visit to the local congregation, where that one wealthy brother slips you a little cash discreetly so you can take your wife out to dinner. You then drive around to the next congregation saying the same thing over and over and over again in your talks. Or maybe your excitement, and you're considering, wow, my excitement was when I finally landed that coveted elder title. Oh man, you have arrived. Where you then as an elder serve the governing body's interests in your local congregation. You likely work full time. You find new and creative ways to neglect your own family for congregation duties, and you find out all the dirty secrets of the organization now that you're an elder. Oh, did I mention that part of the excitement is you also get to destroy people's lives by telling the rest of the congregation, including their own family, to shun them until you say it's okay not to. You hear horrifying secret stories, often from children, then hide it from everyone, including local law enforcement. Or you skip time with your own wife and kids to write yet another meeting part on how exciting the life of a loyal Jehovah's Witness is. It's all very exciting, Brother Bell, and you young ones listening in. You see, the excitement in this organization never ends if you want the best life this side of a massive slaughter. Do you remember even jumping out of bed and running to that book cart? How many people have done that? Because you're making a real difference in people's lives as you launch yourself from bed and run to stand in front of a book cart. This convention reminds you that as you stand there in front of that book cart in a state of disassociation, well, if you're a witness listening in, you're not alone. You see, hovering just above your head is a couple of invisible angels. You see, you're working together to make a difference in people's lives, as Brother Bell said, even as those people that you're impacting walk straight by you in front of that book cart, feeling actually kind of sorry for you. It's all very exciting, according to Brother Bell. And it all got you and me to jump out of bed because, well, as Brother Bell says, you're working with the best people on earth. End quote. Am I now? Wow. In a poll no one seems to know where to find, somebody somewhere has declared Jehovah's Witnesses to be the best people on earth. And wow, I'm doing the unthinkable and just reading this book they claim is theirs. It's called the Bible. And the very guy they're talking about during this entire convention, their king, Jesus Christ, look, this is awkward. He said this about people. And I guess Brother Bell forgot about the earlier symposium on Luke, because Luke recorded Jesus saying this about every person on earth. At Luke 14:11 of the New World Translation, Jesus said, he said this, quote, "For everyone who exalts himself, best people on earth, will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted," end quote. Wow. The Apostle Paul goes on to say, you remember he had this blinding encounter with Jesus, or so he tells us, at Romans chapter 2, verse 11, quote, "For there is no partiality with God," end quote. Well, that's awkward. I thought Brother Bell said that Jehovah's Witnesses were the best people on earth. That's elite. That's elite status. They're pretty partial. But then Peter, now you remember Peter, he spent a lot of time with Jesus too. That's what the convention's about. At Acts 10:34 and verse 35 of the New World Translation, we are told this. Peter says, quote, "At this, Peter began to speak, and he said, 'Now I truly understand that God is not partial, but in every nation, the man who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him,' end quote." Wait a minute. Okay, if you say so, Peter, Paul, and Jesus himself via Luke, but according to Brother Bell at this year's convention, Jehovah's Witnesses are still the best people on earth. It's in his intro to this talk. And I'm not going to go into the many, many, many ways this is absolutely absurd. But we can start with the Jehovah's Witness on stage giving this talk, Brother Bell, actually pointing at himself and everyone listening to him in the audience and telling them that they're better than everyone else on earth. How about we just start there? Does the best need to tell everyone that they're the best? Is that how it works? Is this an oxymoron of sorts? No, of course not. You see, Brother Bell, He's got Holy Spirit. And the rest of us, most of us listening in to me rant, well, we don't. We don't have it. He has it. We don't. And they are the best people on earth. If you're a young person sitting there and you've given up everything in life to just keep sitting there, you're feeling pretty good about yourself and all the sacrifices you've made to this point because look, you're one of the best people on earth. But just in case you feel like you're among the best people on earth, just a final thought that I personally am struggling with, maybe someone listening can point me in the right direction, that I can't seem to corroborate with what Brother Bell is telling Jehovah's Witnesses at the summer convention. I got to point at that book they claim is theirs again. It's called the Bible. At James chapter 2, verses 1 through 4 of the New World Translation, where we are told that same Holy Spirit at work, quote, "My brothers, you are not holding to the faith of our glorious Lord Jesus Christ while showing favoritism, are you? For if a man with gold rings on his fingers and in splendid clothing comes into your meeting, but a poor man in filthy clothing also enters, do you look with favor on the one wearing the splendid clothing and say, 'You, take this seat here in a fine place with the best people on earth'?" Sorry, I added that back to the quote. "And then do you say to the poor one, quote, 'You keep standing,' or 'Take that seat there under my footstool'? If so, do you not have class distinctions among yourselves? And have you not become judges rendering wicked decisions?" End quote. James 2, 1 through 4. I'm struggling with what Brother Bell said. If I'm reading these inspired words correctly, we aren't even supposed to have class distinctions or say we are better than anyone else. Am I wrong? Did I miss something? But there is Brother Bell at the summer convention, and the audience just laughs along when he says it. Brother Bell, as he gaslights them to their very faces. I couldn't help but wonder if this talk was the last talk of the Saturday session for a reason. You see, everyone in the audience is all carved up from lunch. They're dozing and falling asleep. They're thinking about the pool at the hotel or just going home. And there's Brother Bell planting this crap in people's minds when they're not really lucid and paying attention. Nonetheless, someone is, because Jehovah's Witnesses on video laugh along as they're told by Brother Bell that they are the best people on earth. And so the talk begins, planting the seed in everyone's mind that they are indeed elite among all of mankind, and by extension, creating any doubt as to why anyone listening would ever want to leave. And remember, as is my affinity personally, he is directly addressing young ones. That is who they want. But Brother Bell continues in his talk by saying this, quote, "If so, do not look for a career in this world. The work environment today is toxic. Most are just bidding their time to retire and get away from secular work. But now, on the other hand, you can be like Paul," end quote. And I have to confess, was watching this in the morning, and I shot a wonderful Sumatran coffee out my nose. I was laughing so hard that it hurt. Imagine claiming that all work outside of Jehovah's Witnesses is toxic. All of it. You might have been someone that saved a life in a major surgery. You're a doctor, but you weren't doing it with the best people on earth. You might have been the key engineer or architect, ensuring the daily safety of others. That too is toxic, I should say. You may have spent your life in social services, helping those in need or dealing with people fighting mental disorders. That too is toxic. And I got to tell you, As I listened in to him claiming everything outside of their world is toxic, any career you do, any form of service, I'd heard this all before. It was nothing new. I don't know, it sounded a lot like this. Quote, rather than being content with sustenance and covering, those who devote themselves to getting a higher education usually want to be able to enjoy the rest of the things that money can buy. End quote. Wait, what? Who said that? Who said this insanity? When was this said? Well, folks, that's a quote from the February 1st, 1967 Watchtower on page 76. Did I mention it was 1967 that they were saying this stuff? I shared this particular example because this quote and this type of thinking impacted me personally. And the rhetoric Jehovah's Witnesses are hearing at the 2024 Summer Convention is a carbon copy of the things they were saying 57 years ago. People who want to have a career, even in the service of others, are toxic in 2024. And 57 years ago, well, they claimed they were just money grubbers. Toxic. 57 years later, the world is still here. Generations overlap now, and well, any desire for a career makes you a greedy, toxic person, according to Brother Bell in this talk, who the best people on earth don't want the rest of these young people to be around. But don't you love how they still try to lean into timelines? Timelines that have been around since the beginning of this organization, to tell the rest of these people that they are wasting their time wanting to better themselves. Who can forget this one? The Awake of May 8th, 1989, page 1. What career should I choose? Quote, a university degree may or may not improve your employment prospects, but one fact is indisputable. The time left is reduced. There's that timeline. Back to the quote. For all its presumed benefits, would 4 years or more in a university be the best use of that remaining time? End quote. May 1989. 4 years later, in 1993, you would have had a college degree. And I'm guessing at this point, you would have been well along to making decent money and supporting your family. But you see, the message in 2024 at the Summer Convention is nothing new. Same message. And if you listened in 1989, like this podcast host did, that reduced time amounts to 35 years of your life if you're still sitting in that audience at this year's convention among the best people on earth, listening to Brother Bell say the same damn thing. Any Jehovah's Witness that obeys this stuff will also lose decades and years off their lives. They'll lose their dreams, they'll lose the time, they'll lose all their potential. And for those who wonder if the governing body is doing all of this on purpose, if it's calculated, folks, they know what they're doing. They addressed us as young people back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and we're all in our 50s, 60s, 70s, some people now. They're doing it to kids today at the Summer Convention in 2024, young people. But going back to his talk, if all of that isn't enough to convince you I might want to rethink this, just remember Brother Bell tells everyone in the audience they can be like Paul. Yeah, you remember Paul. Paul has a lot to say about the family, about sex, about women, about gay people, and who himself actually spent a lifetime murdering people, but was then blinded by the light as he walked to a city and then went on to live the rest of his life. Celibate, childless, and well, he made tents for a living. He was a tent maker. You too, young person in 2024 at the summer convention, you can be like Paul. I can just see those young people in the audience looking up from their iPhones and planning their course to be just like the Apostle Paul in 2024. Who doesn't want to live the rest of their life alone, with no family and no money? Brother Bell tells me all workplaces and career choices are toxic. So if I'm a young person at the convention, I must believe him. Yeah, I'm being real sarcastic. But let's get real. When the sarcasm wanes, you're looking at systemic brainwashing. Getting the young people among Jehovah's Witnesses to believe they should give up on everything they've ever wanted, give up on a career, and live like a lonely tent maker the rest of their lives, bashing gay people and women. It's the same message. It's just a different district convention. It's truly unnerving. As the audience giggles along, you can see it, you can listen to it. They're brainwashing young people. And you got to wonder what the older ones who bought off on it many decades ago are thinking as they hear that same message. They're just sitting there older. They got crow's feet, white hair. They've been struggling to make it for decades. No sign of this paradise thing on the horizon, because now generations overlap. But I do got a neat beard, and I didn't have to shave my legs this morning. But what comes next in this talk on Saturday afternoon, the very last talk, if I wasn't laughing already, this one really made me laugh. They simply have no new tricks. It's all the same stuff. I really had almost a time machine moment as I watched this. I'm no longer 18 years old or 16 or 17, but I literally, as I listened on, could have lifted this talk from my own childhood in the 80s. Brother Bell goes on to address the audience at this year's convention by saying this, quote, "Lastly, on this point, do not get distracted with higher education. The training we get in Jehovah's organization makes our young ones well equipped. They learn how to express themselves with poise. They can have a meaningful conversation with a human being rather than just a cell phone. So, of course, the universities want our children." Our children? What? Of course, school counselors are going to push you to go to college. You're desirable to them because of your training from Jehovah's organization. But do not let them trick you into that higher education is going to make you happy. End quote, Brother Bell. This illustrious counsel is followed by a video drama of a young man who had dreams of going to college. But then he just remembers the Apostle Paul, who had gone to his own version of college back in the day and decided that it was all rubbish to him. It's right there in a movie. And then the camera in this video literally swings to an overflowing garbage can to make sure that all the young people in the audience get the point that higher education is garbage. I'm not kidding. Watch it. It's very subtle. The young man then smirks at the overflowing garbage can and then tells us all he gave up the idea of bettering himself in favor of working for the governing body and a lifetime standing in front of a book cart. And then he relates that he now works part-time as a water meter reader. And we actually get to see him at work in his prime, in his early 20s, bending over and opening up a water meter box on the street in his freshly pressed pair of light khakis. The music reaches a crescendo, and the message in this video is clear. Don't be toxic. Work with the best people on earth. They're over there handing out books for free for a publishing company in New York. Oh, and you might not be killed any day now if you do what we are doing. That's the message for all the young people at this year's Summer's Convention. I got to tell you, it is truly staggering to believe any of us were once captive to this messaging. And I was. And it breaks our hearts, and it should break our hearts, I should say, that there are still good people that are trapped by this messaging. It's nothing new. And might I add, this has ruined millions of lives, folks. Those of us that listened to this and obeyed this same crap counsel in the 70s, 80s, and 90s are now, in 2024, feeling the effects of not bettering ourselves with more education, better careers, health insurance, retirement, and more. But none of those old-timers are interviewed during the 2024 district convention. Do you think that's an accident? Do you really believe that? They don't interview the old folks. They want the younger generation. However, if you're a Jehovah's Witness listening in, maybe you're at the convention, I encourage you to do something. Look around. Just look around. Scan the audience. Those same people, my generation in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that listen to this crap, they're all around you. They look different now. Like I said, they have crow's feet. They have gray hair. They have health problems. Many of them have no savings or retirement. But we obeyed. And those people, many of them are still sitting right next to you at this convention. You see, the governing body knows that those folks will eventually die off. My generation. And the next generation will have its own Brother Bell, telling them the same line of bullshit that will ruin their lives. Don't better yourself. Stand in front of a book cart. Read water meters. Wash windows. Be a janitor. Push our books. Everything else is toxic, and why wouldn't you want to? We're the best people on earth. Jehovah's Witnesses all over the world and the internet like to claim that the governing body doesn't discourage higher education. Have you seen this stuff? It's in forums, it's on Quoras, it's in places. Oh, that's not. They're totally exaggerating. They're mentally diseased apostates. They don't discourage higher education. And yet, folks, here it is. Gaslighting people and cognitive dissonance at work. Brother Bell's on video telling people higher education is toxic. Don't do it. They openly discourage it, and elders have been removed from their position for having kids who disobeyed and decided to go to college. All the while, many Jehovah's Witnesses don't know that the governing body actually pays people with their donated funds to go to college for them. That's right. They select Jehovah's Witnesses back on the compound to go to college on the money you send in. And I'm not kidding. How do you think Jehovah's Witnesses have a growing legal department? Lawyers are required to go to school and pass the bar exam. How do you think they have engineers and IT people all active back on the Warwick compound? I'll tell you why. They all have college education. You see, if it serves them, it's okay. If it's just for you, well, that's terrible. You're greedy and toxic. If you think I'm exaggerating and don't believe me, listen in on what Brother Bell says next. Quote, cultivate humility. Jehovah cannot use us if we're not humble, and Jehovah's organization cannot use us. If we're building a kingdom hall and you ignore the direction on how to build it because we thought we knew better, you could have a lopsided kingdom hall. So when direction is given by Jehovah's organization, listen, accept it, and apply it. End quote. If you're like me and you've been around a while, the old song was going off in your head. Listen, obey, and be blessed. Remember that one? Listen, obey, and be blessed. What? They're not even trying anymore. They still just veil their high control messaging in songs. But here's a guy, Brother Bell from the branch committee, he's just saying it on stage, right to their face. If you don't obey what the governing body says, including such matters as career and higher education, instead becoming a window washer or meter reader, Jehovah can't use you, and neither can they. They need you to humbly obey anything that they tell you to do. The illustration he gives of the Kingdom Hall is just plain stupid. I don't even understand it. Another example of how poor the brothers and teachers have become in this organization. They've really gotten bad, in my opinion, or maybe I'm just mentally free. You tell me your thoughts. For those that have been part of the Kingdom Hall building program, you know that the entire project when building a Kingdom Hall depends on very educated and experienced people. They don't roll out a kid who's never nailed a board together. Whether it's the architecture or the construction itself, they're educated people. And I guess Brother Bell just couldn't come up with a different illustration, huh? I don't know. Maybe he's implying if you don't listen to them, the building will cave in on you. Interesting. Not sure. His illustration made no sense to me. But what he did say is just another form of one of many of my favorite quotes from this group. From the Watchtower, I've said it before, November 15th, 2013, page 20, where the faithful slave told Jehovah's Witnesses this, and it still shocks me every time I read it, quote, "At that time, the life-saving direction that we receive from Jehovah's organization may not appear practical from a human standpoint. All of us must be ready to obey any instructions we may receive, whether these appear sound from a strategic or human standpoint or not." End quote. Wow. Just another summer district convention where they can gather people together and tell them to obey anything they tell them, whether it makes sense or not. And Brother Bell in this talk on Saturday just said the same thing. Nothing culty here, right? I continue to be amused that thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses sit there and they don't realize that they've thrown Psalms 146 and verse 3 out the window. Jehovah's Witnesses are required to obey men. Period. And as Brother Bell is telling Jehovah's Witnesses this summer in his talk, if you don't obey him and his male friends, well, you're not humble. In fact, that makes you a lot like Satan himself, if we're being frank. I got to tell you, it's wild. It's wild. It only gets wilder once you're free of their mind control and you truly listen to these talks. But Brother Bell isn't done. As if telling you you're toxic and you lack humility if you don't hang on his every word, he goes on to say this, quote, "Cultivate modesty so you're an example to others. We show we are modest when we don't demand our own rights. People can watch us and tell if we're modest by our actions and by our dress and grooming." End quote. Got to slip that in now. If you're someone in the audience listening to this talk and you still have a crumb, just a crumb, of personality, individuality, or self-esteem, he is here trying to wipe it out. He's trying to crush it. Everything that makes you a unique human. In each and everything he says, you'll find not so subtle insinuation that if you don't think the way they think, you're not someone they want. A Jehovah's Witness has no rights. Never mind stripping you of your own unique personality. He is here telling you that you have no rights. You shouldn't demand your rights. As you hear that, please let it sink in. Give it a few minutes. Sit with it for a few minutes. When you hear how they treat people by means of shunning them, when you hear of how they treat children, when you hear about your own thoughts, your own marriage, your own sexual practices, your own body, including your own blood, hair, skin, and more, when you sit with this, you quickly realize that a Jehovah's Witness has no rights, none. And you're not to demand them, or you're a bad person. You've surrendered everything you are and everything you want to be to 9 guys in upstate New York. When you get baptized, they've captured you. They can tell you what to do, and they can tell you other people how to treat you, including your own family. Folks, Jehovah's Witnesses are numbers to these men. They can speak to how Jehovah has your hairs numbered and Jesus chases down and loves each one of his sheep, blah, blah, blah. They can read the scriptures, but Brother Bell just stood on a stage with a camera in his face and told Jehovah's Witnesses they have no rights. And if you think you do, they will make sure you don't. How dare you bring up your own rights? For a Jehovah's Witness listening, none of this is biblical. If you find it in the Bible, send it to me. Would you? Please send it to me. And how interesting. He wants to be sure to control what you're wearing and how you look. They gave him a freebie a few months ago. But not really. Now we're going to talk about length of beards and color of women's slacks, how tight they are. All these guys have done to Jehovah's Witnesses is found more ways to strain out the gnat. That's it. They're Pharisees. But then, as the talk continues late Saturday afternoon, Brother Bell finishes strong. And I got to tell you, I want to thank him because he made me laugh so hard. Apparently, Brother Bell, he's something else. He is the governing body's version of a dating coach. That's right. He's got the young ones captured in this talk, and he wants to give them some advice on dating. But it's interesting. He doesn't even talk to the fellas that much. He wants to really single out the ladies, the sisters, the young women in the audience. Are you ready, ladies? Brother Bell, in all his wisdom on all things dating and romance, wants you to know this, quote, "There is something that can help you greatly in the full-time service or pull you out of the full-time service. So if you're a sister carefully contemplating marriage, carefully consider how your choice of a mate could greatly affect your full-time service." End quote for a moment. This is staggering, folks. Love, romance, the great pursuit of it, all the depth of it, the nuance, the power of it, everything. It doesn't mean anything. This is about full-time service. You got to live with this person. You got to come together in partnership. You got to hold hands. You got to get through problems, health problems, financial problems. It doesn't matter. How's this going to impact handing out our books and literature? Back to his quote from the talk, quote, "For example, you fall in love with that brother. He's got the hair, a groomed beard nowadays. Yeah, he's got a great job. And the smile. Ooh." He does it. Here is a list of questions, young sisters, that you might want to ask. Have you talked to his elders in his congregation before getting involved? What do they say about his spirituality? Have you worked with him in the ministry, and can he handle the word of God skillfully? End quote. He has several questions there for you ladies, not the guys. But my favorite question is the next one. He asked them to consider this, quote, is he kind to his mother? And does he help her around the house? End quote. What? Oh, no. No, he didn't. Yeah, he did. Brother Bell, is he kind to his mother and does he help her around the house? Seeing him during this part of his talk is highly recommended. Please go watch it. He is something else delivering this question. And first, they apparently need women to do the bulk of their free labor, so they need to tell them to quit marrying brothers who don't dig a good book cart. Don't you feel valuable, ladies, sisters, young women in this audience? They would much rather you never marry or have kids, because you see there are Watchtower magazines to hand out. But if you are considering marriage or even just a date, maybe your brother asks you out, you should never trust yourself anyway. You're a basket case. I've got some advice for you. You should call the body of elders in his congregation and ask for a rundown on this guy. After all, the elders, well, let me tell you, as a former one, they're pretty balanced guys themselves. I'm sure they will give an accurate assessment of this brother, right? And if you're an elder, well, listen, with all that time you have on your hands these days, you are also now a matchmaker, according to Brother Bell. You got to get into the romance business. I know everyone on earth is about to die, and well, you have a few people to look after in the congregation, but listen, Brother Elder, please make time to be a matchmaker. That's what the governing body wants us to know. You remember, listen, anyone listening in knows, you remember Jesus' parable of the matchmaking shepherd, right? You remember that parable, the matchmaking shepherd? The Jewish girl walks up and asks the shepherd if the other shepherd in a nearby field is a good guy, or hey, listen, he doesn't spend a little too much time awkwardly staring at the sheep, does he? What? Wait, you don't remember this parable in the Bible? It's a really popular one. I can't. But my favorite part of this comment by Brother Bell is right there. If you've ever doubted what people tell you about Jehovah's Witness culture and marriage, here he is admitting it in a talk in front of thousands. Brother Bell is telling sisters to ask if the guy they're interested in helps his mom around the house. Wait a minute. The brother still lives at home? Is he a teenager? Why would a grown woman want to know if a grown man is picking up his underwear at his mom's house? Why would they want to know that? Does this mean he still lives with his mom? Does mom do his laundry? Does mom cook for him? What? Yeah. There it is. There it is. Now, besides the incredibly insulting messaging this is to a woman, like she can't, there it is. Brother Bell just got on camera and admitted that Jehovah's Witnesses love themselves young marriages. Marriages that come right out of... In an all-out effort to dodge fornication and sex, Jehovah's Witnesses get married as teenagers. Most of them literally go from mom and dad's house to a marriage. It is incredibly common, and everyone listening knows I'm right. It is a huge problem inside Jehovah's Witnesses. If you thought young baptism was bad, and it is, Its favorite cousin in this culture is young marriages. And Brother Bell knows this. So he's telling sisters at this year's summer convention, hey, ask around and make sure that this guy you're interested in, this brother, wasn't recently grounded by his mother for leaving his socks on the floor or leaving the toilet lid up. Make sure he's doing nice things to mom at her house. If he hasn't, and he will let you pioneer for us, you might just have yourself a keeper there, sister. I can't beat this. I just can't beat this. He got on camera on stage and gave this counsel. This talk at this convention, this entire talk and all the messages therein, for someone who's really listening, not reaching for that pack of lifesavers like I used to just to stay awake, but really listening, is chock full of admissions of how dysfunctional and at the very tail end evil this organization is. For example, if you're a woman, a sister in that audience at the district convention, what are you thinking as he says this to you? Are you insulted? I got to tell you, I'm insulted and I'm a guy. Oh, and I got to admit, as I have on the show before, I'm one of those young marriages. I got married the day after my 20th birthday, and that was by design, folks, so I didn't have to say I got married at 19. Not kidding. I'm ripping myself here. And this entire convention, this 2024 summer convention, it's just something to behold, because these men can't get out of their own way in how they speak to Jehovah's Witnesses, and in this final example, how they speak to the sisters, the women. And I got to tell you, I'm just going to insert this here because it seems like a good spot. I get a lot of DMs on this show and emails and comments on YouTube and the like, claiming that I'm too apologetic towards the women, the sisters, and the kids. But I'm going to say right here, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry for that. I feel like women and children are singled out with disastrous futures in this organization. Men are, of course, too. I'm living proof of it. But this is the kind of counsel a woman has to listen to. This talk right here is an incredible insult to all the women and sisters in that audience. And it's an incredible insult to the people they want to trap the most. Young people. It's incredible to watch these men claim that they are directed from the heavens by Jesus himself. The apostles are all sitting beside him, giving him ideas for summer conventions. The angels are getting involved. Judge Joe, Chuck Taze Russell, Nathan Knorr, Franz, they're all up there. This is the information they want Jehovah's Witnesses to know. These conventions go back to the beginning of their history, and they're always a summer highlight. And all I have to say to that fact that they teach is there it is, folks. Using just one example, the final talk on this Saturday's convention program, there it is. Yeah. I miss those lifesavers. I do not miss those smelly bathrooms. The men's rooms were awful. There is so much more, obviously, that I could highlight from this convention, and I might do that in coming weeks. But I'm going to stop with just this one talk from Brother Bell. I can't believe I used to look forward to the summer district convention. I can't believe it in hindsight. That race to get to the new book release after the final prayer. Wondering what the costume drama was going to be this year. Wondering what cute sisters would be there and what congregation they went to. It just feels like that culture inside Jehovah's Witnesses is long gone. Correct me if I'm wrong, haven't been in a while. But it bears repeating. The more things change in God's organization, the more they stay the same. All these decades later, this summer's message from the faithful and discreet slave is the same message all of us, including myself, heard many, many decades ago. They own you. Thanks for listening this week. Wherever you may be, I hope you're enjoying the summer. Be well.